we're sitting here in the beer saloon. I wanted to do a little video today about the canning process and talk about how I do it. I've had a couple people ask about the ways that I make it work with such a small system, and a lot of this is taken from the way that we did it at Black Star, so I just wanted to share this in case anybody is interested and wants to try it on their own. But yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and show y'all my supplies and how it works. So this is the setup for what I need for the canning process. Over here, starting on the right hand side, I have a Blickman BeerGun. This is you connect it to the beer source, and then there's a purge trigger that you press down and it allows CO2 to flow, and then you have a retractable trigger that opens this metal dip tube basically and allows beer to pour through the bottom of that. And so this gets connected to the way that I do it. I connect it to the actual faucet, the tap itself, with this little beer nut. This is something that you would find on a keg coupler, and I just have it connected to the Lucre faucet, which I will show you in just a second, with this beer washer in between the two, if it would focus. So that is the actual filling apparatus. Next we have cans and lids. So these are 12-ounce ball cans, 202 to be exact. I believe that's just the size of them. And this is the corresponding lid. So the way it works is you purge the can with CO2, fill it with beer, and then put the lid on top. Once that lid is placed on top, you load it into the seamer, and I have just a single head October seamer. This is usually used in breweries for seaming like 16 or 12-ounce cans one at a time, kind of to order, but I use it pretty effectively, I think, to seam, you know, multiple cans back to back, so that I can do bulk canning runs and create 6-packs with it. So the way that this thing works is you load the can in the bottom on that plastic support piece. You crank this up, compresses the can and the lid into the chuck, and then you use these two seaming arms to fold that metal aluminum over onto itself. And I'll throw a little diagram up in the video so that you can kind of see what that looks like. And then the can's rotating while this is happening, by the way, and you'll see that in a second as I show you the actual process while I'm doing it. And then once the can's done, remove it from the chuck and rinse it, slap a label on it. I have this 3D printed labeler. This thing is called a Label Slayer. It was definitely the cheapest option just to get started. Some of those labeling machines can be quite expensive, but basically you put this label roll on its side with that dowel supporting it, and the label runs through this applicator. You pull the paper from one end and it spins and labels the can. So you'll get to see all that in motion in just a second, but I wanted to give a quick rundown on each of these parts. So shout out to Blickman Engineering for manufacturing the BeerGun. Super ergonomic and really helpful. Cans purchased from American Canning. Well, actually, this lot I purchased from Black Star to get me by for this week, but American Canning supplies all of the canning needs in the greater Austin area, and actually the whole nationwide. They ship all over the place. They're super awesome folks over there. Those paktech are 6-pack holders. Basically, they snap onto the top of the cans. The machine is an October seamer, so shout out to October. They make really great machines. This is like the newest version of the single head tabletop seamer. It's all stainless steel, so it's pretty durable and doesn't rust out. Labels, I get those printed at a company called Blue Label. They do really awesome work. These labels are printed on this kind of like pressure sensitive label material, and it's matte finished, and they just look super good. So, and then I already shouted this out, but that's the Label Slayer. It's a pretty cheap option, but it is, so far it's worked pretty well. So I will move along to the next step in the process, which is to get all the stuff that's going to touch the beer, get it nice and sanitized, and then stage up all the equipment and cans and stuff so that we can get going. All right, so we've got a little container of sanitizer. I use SaniClean for this application. It's really good for soaking parts, and this is the same as that. So I will be throwing in the beer washer, and I will be submerging this hose into this liquid, just so I can get some of that sanitizer in the tube, and then I will use that as a siphon, which I'll show you, and I'll let the liquid flow through the tube, and that hopefully will create enough of a siphon to pull that sanitizer through all of that hose and the inside of that beer gun. All right, so I've got the hose filled with sanitizer, and I want to be careful that it doesn't completely fall out, but I'm just going to bring my beer gun down here. Oh, there's the CO2 line. Open that up, and then CO2 is falling through, and that's exactly what I was hoping wouldn't happen, is that hose started creeping out of the bucket, but you get the point. The CO2 was flowing through, and I just used that empty can to catch it flowing through. So now the line is completely purged and filled with, oh, that's the that's the CO2 line. Now it's completely filled with sanitizer, and I'll let that sit there for about 5 minutes. Usually like 2 to 5 minutes is good. And then I will be back. All right, new vantage point. So I am back behind the bar, behind the taps. These are the lucre faucets that I use to pour the beer in a traditional Czech style. So the cool thing about these taps, other than they're awesome and allow you to pour great wet foam and control the flow rate and all that good stuff, is that they are they come apart very easily. So they're all pretty well designed and manufactured. And so this little nut right here that holds on this kind of a gooseneck spout, you unscrew that and this thing comes off. So I'm gonna go ahead and set that right there. And then inside, let's see if you can see in there, inside there's a little nylon gasket washer that you can kind of fish out. Don't worry, I'm gonna sanitize all this. I'm just trying to show you for the camera that, oh, there, oh, great. It fell down in the hole. Almost lost it. All right, so there's that little nylon piece. Come on, focus, bro. Little nylon washer. Put that down there as well. Then I'm gonna do the same thing with this other tap. So these are the two beers that I'm gonna be canning today. The one on the left-hand side is the 12 degree, and the one on the right-hand side is the 13 degree Tamave. Pull that out, come on. Sometimes water helps squirt it out. Oh, great. Editing. Let's see if that's makes for a good video, and I'll put that down over here. So this is actually, I said water, but it's not really water. This is sanitizer that was in that bucket. I'm gonna give both of these a really good rinsing down and squirting. So on the previous way that I used to do this off of taps is you would disconnect from this part right here. It's like a reverse threaded nut that keeps the entire tap itself secured to the back. Most taps are much smaller than these as well, but this would get disconnected, and then you would put, or the way that I do it on the other system is I would take the end that I'm gonna hook up to here would actually be a different fitting, and it would thread onto this, and the mechanism would actually have a restrictor built into it. You can find them on morebeer.com and other homebrew websites, but you basically twist it for different restriction levels. But the cool part about using these lucre taps is that they have a flow control valve on the side. So up is higher restriction and down is less restriction. So the reason that it's important to have flow control or restriction control on the system that you're canning off of is to control the amount of breakout that you get, so the amount of CO2 that comes out of solution. Right around here, yeah, so when you're filling, it will naturally want to foam, because that's what happens with beer. If you take a beer and you open it up, it'll fizz and have that loud noise, that CO2 coming out of solution. And if you're doing an aggressive fill, CO2 is going to be more prone to coming out of solution if there's more turbulence. And so you want to restrict that flow so that the beer flow rate is lower, and there's, by nature of restricting the flow, the pressure increases, keeping that CO2 in solution, suspension solution. I get those, I interchange those often, sorry. But it's much better to have flow control on there, is kind of the short reason. Anyways, now let's check out the process. All right, one last thing. I've got this CO2 tank attached to a regulator, and on this side I am gonna set this at about 8 to 10 PSI. That runs to the back of the BeerGun, and so that's how I'm able to release CO2 and purge the can. So with that trigger on the side, then I need to hook up the back or the liquid end of the line to the taps themselves. All right, so this is just a regular generic beer washer, or beer nut rather, and it connects to the threads that I just removed the kind of gooseneck spout from. And with that gasket inside, you just put that on there snugly. It ends up being a really nice connection. Alright, everything seems to be set up. Now I just need to purge the line. It has all of this sanitizer in it, so I want to make sure that that is purged out. I'll get that into my beer, so I'm going to pull the trigger, open the tap. The beer is going to start flowing out. I'm going to restrict that just so it flows a little bit slower. I see some CO2 coming out of the solution. Alright, so that's purged, that's good to go. Now I'm going to go ahead and get the cans and lids staged up. Alright, CO2's turned on here so that I have it. It's actually quite a bit higher than I need it. So I'm turning that down and adjusting it to be an appropriate amount of CO2. I'm going to lower this. Let's turn that on just so that it's ready. And I like to do, for this setup in this kind of tight space, I like to do 3 cans at a time. So what we're going to do is we're going to purge the can first. Usually 5 to 6 seconds, but I just turned that up because it sounded a little low. I'm going to go ahead and open the valve to let beer flow through. First one's always going to be foamier than the rest, and the whole point, for the whole goal to this canning process is to purge oxygen out, fill with beer that isn't losing CO2 from the bottom, and then capping on foam. So on the first one I usually pour until beer is completely flowing over the edge, and then on the subsequent ones I will go ahead and do the purge like normal, 6, and then it will create enough of a barrier of foam that when it gets to the top and I remove the dipstick of the BeerGun, that amount of foam is close to exactly as much foam as I need to be displaced with the lid, so that I'm getting as much beer in there as possible with as little oxygen ingress as possible. So once I get these first 3 done and seamed, I'm just going to go and do the process like normal. This is a pretty monotonous procedure, but it works. It's slow. It's one at a time. But yeah, you can crank out a few cases an hour and listen to some podcasts or tunes or whatever you want. Pretty nice. And then you want to push out any excess beer and foam. Place the beer in the support. I'm going to go with the right stick first. So this is the first action of the can seaming process. It folds over the lip of the lid onto the can most of the way, and then this last process flattens and seals that seam that was formed, which again, I'll throw up a little diagram so you can see. Normally you would do one and then you turn this off, but when you're in a process like this, I'm just going to go quickly, and I'm going to remove this, and I need a rinse bucket, so I'll be right back for that. Alright, so same process. Got first seam done, second seam, remove, rinse, and then you'll kind of get into a pattern, a rhythm of rinsing and grabbing the next one and putting it in at the same time. So you want to be super diligent about bringing these seamers all the way in, but you don't want to push too hard. You don't want to deform the seam. You want it to be nice and evenly rolled over. So I'm going to do the next run just at a normal pace like I would do if I was here alone. Even though I'm still here alone, I'm just talking to myself in the back of the beer saloon, so that's fun for everybody walking through the door. A lot of this filling process and technique is very feel oriented, so knowing like how much CO2 is coming out of solution, how much beer is in the can, and then normally you would want to weigh these cans if you're doing quality control, so there's a limit on how much beer is, you know, acceptable, which if you're advertising that there's 12 fluid ounces of beer inside of the can, you want to make sure that you're putting 12 fluid ounces of beer inside of there, and then the integrity of the can itself will be compromised if you don't have enough beer. If it's overfull, that's not the worst thing in the world, but it can lead to, the most common thing is whenever you open the can, like beer immediately comes out, like it's filled to the brim, so beer comes out and gets all over your hands. It's kind of annoying. So capping on foam, super important for reducing the amount of oxygen, but also making sure that you have that buffer of headspace in there for the appropriate amount of beer. And I'm returning the BeerGun to the sanitizer solution after every can. And that's a 6-pack. So now I'll just kind of cruise along and wrap up some more of these. Maybe I'll do a little time lapse and then, yeah, put my headphones in and rock out.
I'm calling, yeah, maybe I'm selfish. I want you to myself, I can't help it. All mine, yeah, maybe I'm selfish. You're mine, ladies, and I can't. Maybe I'm selfish. I want you to myself, I can't help it.
Alright, so I've got like 47 cans done so far. Can usually do like 3 cases an hour or something like that, maybe a little faster if I'm really hitting it. But so now I need to label them. So with this label slayer, you have to get it set up with the stand and put the feeder, attach it to the feeder securely. You could use some like clamps to keep this down, but I don't have any here, so I'm just gonna hold it down with my hands. It comes with these black inserts to put inside of the roll, and make sure that it is oriented the same way that the can will be facing. So the orientation right now is that the lid of the can is facing out to the left, and so I want the top of the label facing to the left. So take the dowel and set it on the stand. There's a little notch in there, allows it to kind of flow freely. I'm going to take this You need to peel a few, if this is like a new roll of stickers, or you've had, I don't know, this is you're doing like another run, but this feed paper is pretty short. You have to take a few off so that you can actually thread it through the mechanism down here. So I'm going to wind it back. There's a slot, the top slot on the bottom of this used to feed through. It comes through the top of the label applicator, and then you're going to send it back through. It's kind of awkward if this paper is bent in any way. It doesn't work super well, so you have to kind of play with it until you get it. But you feed that, and then it comes out the bottom like that. So basically, when you pull the paper, it will bring the label into the applicator, and then it'll attach it to the can, and it will spin it from there. So I'm going to do one really quick just to kind of get the feel of it. So it's spinning the can. And kind of keep an eye on when it's going to end. These will overlap just like that if you don't watch out. Oops. Okay. So you can see that. My one issue with this, and honestly I had the same issue with another label applicator, is that it tends to apply them unevenly, and so it'll kind of warp the sticker as it's being applied to the can, and it kind of leaves wrinkles in the label once it's applied, and it looks kind of weird. But for this first few runs, it's not a huge deal, but I think the key to that is maybe a consistent speed and pressure on this outlet, or the outfeed of the label paper. It's like, yeah, that one turned out great. So I'm just going to rock and roll with this and kind of try to get through all these, and maybe I'll just throw that on a time lapse as well. I'm also looking at the back where the two ends meet, so that you can see kind of if one is above the other, then it's not going on straight. So these are actually being applied pretty well right now. And it seems pretty counterintuitive that you wouldn't want to apply these labels when the cans are wet, because these are all completely wet, because they were rinsed, but two, they have a ton of condensate because it's warm and humid in here. But it's these pressure sensitive labels are designed to be able to go on to cans like this, because in every canning process you're going to have cans that are moist to some degree, so it's what it's made for. Yeah, I can tell that one went on a little bit swirly. So let's see. You can kind of see it's a little wrinkled. It's hard to get this to focus for some reason, but and I'll just keep chugging along with this. I'm not going to record the whole thing. Alright, so I went ahead and started applying these paktechs and forgot that I'm documenting this. So this is how this works. It's super simple. These are called paktechs. They're just plastic 6-pack holders, and you apply them just by pushing down on top. They snap into place, and then you have a nice little 6-pack of beer. And here's what a dope little stack of 12-degree pale lager looks like. Let's see if I can point to it. Nice! Yeah, cans will be available on Thursday. Okay, all done with the canning process. Let's crack one of these babies open. Nice little carbonation snap there. So yeah, that was a canning day. That's kind of an overview of the process that I use. It's pretty basic, but it ultimately does have pretty good control, and I've found it to be super effective. QC-wise, low DO or dissolved oxygen pickup. You have a lot of control over that because the dip tube stays submerged in the can the whole time. But yeah, so that was pretty much all that you do. And then I did a round of 13-degree Tamabe after I did this. 12-degree pale lager, labeled them up, got them in the cooler. I'm going to start passing them out. I'm going to go around town and kind of introduce myself to a few folks after this, change my shirt, because you can see you get a little bit wet and sweaty or covered in beer during this process, hence the got to get some non-slip waterproof shoes, these boots I got on. But other things that are you should consider when canning, or at least that I consider when canning, are obviously like making sure that you have the right cans and lids. I've seen cans before with the improper lids or from a different manufacturer, and I found they seem to not be very reliable, or at least not as reliable as the Ball 202 lids with the Ball cans. There is a school of thought to sanitize the cans before you fill them, which is a great idea. But these cans came right off of a wrapped pallet, so they are completely sealed. There's still a possibility for microbes or whatever getting in there, but they're super clean, and it's not like it's not the most pressing thing. These cans will be sold and consumed within probably a week. So yeah, and they'll be held cold the whole time. So let me see. Yeah, man, that's dope. That's so cool. For those who don't own breweries and don't operate breweries, drinking your own beer out of a can is something special. So this is the 12-degree pale lager, and this is the 13. I just brought it out for display. But yeah, I'm going to start rolling around town, introducing myself, let people know that Tanglefoot's here. I just did a small run today. Well, my phone's over there that's taking the video, but that was about, let's see, I did 10 six-packs of Tamabe and about 8 to 9 six-packs of the 12-degree pale lager. So close to 20 six-packs, so that'd be about 5 cases. I average, like I said earlier in the video, about 4 cases, 3 to 4 cases an hour. But that took me probably from start to finish, setup, breakdown, everything, probably 2.5 hours. But yeah, it's pretty mindless work and not super stimulating, but once you get in the groove, it's relatively simple and you just bang them out. I'm looking forward to getting more beer into kegs so that I can get more beer into cans. I'm brewing again in the upcoming week or 2-ish, depending on when the ingredients get here. And hopefully I can dedicate more of this beer to cans and get a whole pallet of cans in here, and yeah, just see what the how the reception is with people. I know that people have been asking for to-go stuff for a long time, and in my opinion, cans are the best option. Growlers are great for like that night or the next day, but ideally you want some, oxygen control whenever you're packaging stuff. So, oh man, that was it. Oh, quick little rundown. So I've talked about diving into like the financials of running a brewery in this kind of series, YouTube, whatever. And this is only on YouTube. This is not on the podcast right now. So I'll be doing 2 separate types of content for those platforms. But I've talked about doing a little bit more of a dive into the numbers of like what goes into producing things. So maybe I can give a little quick rundown on the cost of canning on a small scale like this. So packaging is by far the most costly thing that you can do as a brewery. Obviously, there's a lot more cost in this than it would be if I just poured the same volume of beer into a glass that I can wash and reuse multiple times. So the beer cost, let's just say on average, is about $0.25 to 30 cents for the actual liquid that goes inside of the can of beer. So that's 12 ounces volumetrically of beer, and that's just a rough COGS calculation. There's other there's other calculations that you could put, or there's other numbers that you could put into that calculation and drive that number up. But for just rough cogs like malt, yeast, hops, water, let's just call it a quarter to 30 cents of cogs that go into this can. Then you have the actual can. So the cans come without a lid, like I showed earlier. That runs about 14 cents per can. And then the lids themselves run about 3 cents, depending on the lid style. So together, 17 cents. And then, this is where it gets really fun, and the cost increases dramatically, is these labels, depending on the volume that you order them in, they can be as high as 30 cents a piece, 25 to 30 cents a piece. So obviously volume discounts apply. If you order, hundreds of thousands of labels, then you can get them for 10 cents or less. But on a small scale, when I'm ordering in like thousands or maybe hundreds at a time, it becomes much more expensive per unit. So I charge about $12 for, I charge $12 for a 6-pack of beer at Tanglefoot. That would be the total cost of goods that go into that 6-pack. So if you've got 17 cents a can, plus, let's just call it 25 cents for the label, and then you have the paktech 6-pack holder, which those are, I want to say 30 to 50 cents. I can't remember off the top of my head, but let's just call it 50 cents for easy math. So 17 plus 25, that's 47, 50, 52 cents plus another, let's say 50 cents. So, no, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. So 52 cents per can times 6, that's about $3.12 for the 6-pack. And then you have another 50 cents on top. So you've got $3.50, $3.60 per 6-pack in just cost of goods to produce this product. So it's, when you see cans of beer on shelves that are like $6, $7 a 6-pack from like large mass-produced breweries, the only way that they're able to charge that price, and some maybe a loss leader, that may just be marketing for most people, but it is very slim margin, and they're getting tremendous wholesale bulk discounts. So just keep that in mind whenever you're buying craft beer and maybe the price is a little bit more expensive than you're used to, but a $12 6-pack is much more of an appropriate price range for a lot of these beers. And then scaling that is another conversation in itself, which hopefully will be documenting on this channel. So look out for the growth of this brewery and this channel in the future, because I anticipate growing and canning at scale and selling at wholesale prices. But it's a pretty tough business when you're working to compete against very large producers that have the benefit of supply chain advantages, and you're buying a pallet of cans at a time. So anyways, that's just a quick breakdown. Maybe I can do a little spreadsheet of costs involved in the brewery, so that if anybody's interested, let me know. I'm happy to share any information about this business. I come from the previous brewery that I was running. We practiced open book finance, and I think that that's single-handedly one of the biggest benefits of working at that business, because seeing numbers and being involved in controlling numbers of a business gives you a much better insight into how things work in that business and how to operate it effectively. So that's pretty much all I got. I just want to finish drinking this beer and get ready to get my shirt changed, and might go head out around town. But cheers, na zdraví. Thanks for sticking with me and watching this video. I hope you learned something. I hope it helps out somebody who's looking to can either on a homebrew scale or professional scale, whatever. But yep, cheers. We'll see you on the next episode.
I've been thinking about myself